Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. And we're thrilled to see you all here. We spoke last year at this conference, and it was actually my first time speaking at this conference last year. And so I was really delighted to be contacted by the organizers to ask to participate as well. And so we're super happy to be back. I'm Mariana Bonanome. I'm the community manager of WebWork. And so let me just pull up my slides. Let's present. And so online, we also have Andrew Parker, who is our managing editor of the Open Problem Library for WebWork. We have Glenn Rice, who is also working on the release. He's a WebWork developer as well, long time. And also Peter Staub, who's also been long-term contributor to the WebWork community. And so we're here on behalf of the WebWork community, the WebWork project. So we're delighted to be here. So for those of you who are not familiar with WebWork, WebWork is an open source online homework platform. It does particularly well for STEM courses. Its roots are in mathematics. However, there is a lot of contributed content for statistics, for physics, for chemistry, for other engineering sciences. And so those non-math STEM courses, those materials are being very much developed right now and organized. And we'll talk about our summer project shortly. WebWork is free for students. It allows for truly zero cost courses. I can attest that at my institution, City Tech, which is one of the CUNY colleges, the City University of New York, we have really transformed our curriculum with WebWork, where we're matching our custom WebWork material with other OER textbooks. And so our courses are truly zero cost. And we started at the algebra and trig level, and we've worked all the way up the line. And now we're looking at differential equations and linear algebra and other higher level courses to be paired with WebWork. So we're really excited about that. And we've kind of started this movement within our university system. And so we're really excited to be meeting up with other folks who are doing something similar. WebWork is customizable, adaptable. You can basically ask whichever question you want to ask, as long as you can imagine it, and you can execute it, get help on the forums, get help from other faculty who are developing WebWork content. You could really, if you can imagine it, you can ask it. It's community driven, as I've mentioned. Our repository has over 35,000 questions at this time, and ever expanding and growing, and the opportunities for analysis. You can retrieve student interaction data, and you can look at the efficacy of the content that you've created. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it over, and I'm really excited to share with you, and for some reason, there we go, share with you some notes from the release team. And so I'll pass it over to them.
All right. So I'm going to show some of these features of the upcoming release that I've been managing. So first of all, I'll leave this up for a bit and then I'll switch over to my screen, but I'll show, demonstrate these in action on my server. If anyone wants to, you can go to my server at jasper.csmp.missouriwestern.edu. and log in as student 00 something from 1 to 50. Password's the same. And you can see this in action yourself. In any case, the features that I'm going to look at are, first of all, a couple of new macros. We have TIX imagery that can now be injected into a problem. Prior to this, we had Perl package GD that we used. And TIX imagery, of course, if you have done anything with LaTeX, TIXE is for generating images directly in a LaTeX document. And we use that to generate high quality graphics, and they're converted to SVG images in the problems. Then a graphing macro. This allows interactive graphing of problems via a JavaScript application. And then a manual problem grader that works for all problems, previously to this, we had a problem grader that worked only for essay problems. And that also didn't work if those problems were in gateway quizzes. This new grader works for all problems, allowing you to add comments and such to problems that the students have worked and change the grade, as well as works for anything in a gateway quiz. And then with that, there's a student nav that's been added that's just a convenience for getting to different students that have taken a quiz or worked on a homework problem. And then just general improvements to gateway quizzes. All right, so I'll switch over to my server and show these things. So first of all, the TICS imagery. So here is an example of a problem that we had before. So this is an image that was generated with this Perl package. I do a little bit to make these look a little bit nicer than just the default axes that the graph macro provides, but still not that great. Another quick feature I'll inject: if you click on an image before, it would open in a new web page. Now it opens in a JavaScript dialog, and that's enlargeable. You can use the mouse wheel or these little buttons and you can move it around. Anyway, so that's the imagery that you could get before. Now here's an example of a TICS image. So it's an SVG image, which means when you rescale it, it still looks good at all image sizes. Of course, the quality is considerably better. Now, this is kind of a boring example. All I'm doing is putting a point on a graph. Although the graph itself is generated with TIXie, so it's quite a bit better. Let's see, this example, I generate some graphs for multiple choice, and they actually have a graph in them. And of course, you can do more than just graphing. Here's a Venn diagram and some bar graphs and just a general picture. All right, so that's TICS imagery. Of course, I'm not showing how to generate all these images. You have to have some knowledge of how to generate TICS in a LaTeX document. I could show the source on this if you're interested. Okay, now the graph tool macro. So this injects this little thing into the problem. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. And then by default, all of these buttons are shown, but the author can select which of these tools are available, and it's even customizable for those that are really adventurous. You can write your own tools to add to this applet. So this just asks to graph a line. Of course, you click on one of the tools, and then it does whatever that tool does. Here it graphs the line. Of course, you can graph circles, different types of parabolas, and you can fill regions. By default, the fill is sort of an inequality fill. It'll fill all regions that satisfy the inequality. So notice this fills two different parts. You can write a custom fill tool that would only do a selected region. Clear the graph. So that's the basic tool. Of course, one of the downsides at this point is the grader does take some work to write. It does not come with a very good default grader. So for example, for graphing lines, the default grader literally checks to graph that you graph these exact 2 points. And of course, you probably want to allow them to graph a different point on the same line and still be correct. So you need to write a better grader for that. There is an example on our documentation, on our documentation wiki of how to write a problem like this, and an example of a better grader. Eventually, I hope to improve this and have a better default grader. Here's an example of a problem that asks you to graph a circle. You can also have objects already in the graph. This already has the lines for this system of inequalities graphed, and then it just asks you to shade the region. I don't know what the correct region is here. I probably got it wrong. Yep. You can move objects around and change your graph. There. At this point, there's also, so the colors and everything were actually chosen by Alex Jordan for accessibility concerns. There is one limitation of this yet. That's if you have mobility accessibility, and that's hopefully something that I'll be able to add in the future, making it keyboard controllable instead of mouse or touch. And of course, you can have the students graph the whole system as well as shade. The grader gets a lot more complicated for a problem like this, though. And this is an example of writing custom tools. This 3-point parabola tool and 4-point cubic tool are not actually in the macro that's available by default, but you can add these and make more advanced tools. All right, so that's the graph tool macro. Now the grader, actually I'll go back into the graph tool problem. So the first thing you want to do is act as a student to really be effective, although you can show the grader for yourself if you want. So I'll go act as a student. This will show the student's assignments. Here I'll go into a gateway quiz, and I have a completed quiz by this student. If you go to the bottom where the check boxes are and click show problem graders and check test, when you're acting as a student, then the, get that? There we go. The problem graders will show up. Below each problem on the gateway quiz or on a single problem in a homework, you'll get this problem grader. While the problem grader is active, the correct answers will always be displayed, and any solutions and hints, if the problem has it, will always be available. You can add comments that will be shown to the student if they come in and look at their problems in the gateway quiz or their homework problem. You can change the score. So you have a problem down here that has different parts. The weights for the parts, these are all just default weights for this problem, are available, and you can change the individual weights to change the score, or of course just change the score that will be submitted. Note, these are not saved anywhere in the system, so every time you reload this, it'll just take the score that the grader gives from the problem. This is the only thing that is saved, the problem score. And this problem also has parts, but notice this has weights set by the problem, and those are shown here as well. They're not just the total weight divided by the number of parts. And then we have the student nav. Notice that follows along with you as you move down the page, and you can switch between students. And my server seems to be going slow here. I don't know why it's so slow. There we go. Or you can switch between tests, just next and previous. Or if you're in a homework problem and show the grader. And of course you have the next problem and previous problem up to the right, and the next and previous student still. The grader shows up between the results and the problem in homework problems in here. The student didn't work the problem, so you can't enter a comment for them. I think I have the student worked it. So if they have worked it, then the comment box will show up. Okay, so that's the problem grader. And finally, I was just going to talk about some of the improvements to gateway quizzes in general. I'll go back to the gateway quizzes. The first thing is if you are on the homework sets page where it shows everything for the class, and a student wants to start a new gateway quiz and they click on the template at the top. I need to not be acting for this to work. If you're a student, this would happen. If you're acting as a student, it won't happen. So when you click on this, you get a little dialogue that asks you to confirm that you actually want to start before actually going into the quiz. Previously, it would just immediately start the quiz. This only shows up if it's a timed quiz. Of course, the time icon will be here for these. And then if you click cancel, of course, it doesn't actually start. Tells you how long you have to complete the quiz. You click begin, then it actually starts. And I don't know, again, why my server is so slow. Hopefully we get into this so I can show the other features. Come on, server. Sorry about this. There we go, finally. All right, now the first feature I wanted to point out is that, and again, this might be a problem. Previous releases of WebWork, you could not use GeoGebra applets in gateway quizzes. Now you can, and you can use multiple GeoGebra applets. These first two problems, once they load, will have an applet right in this area and another one over here. Now, of course, TIX imagery works. Here's the graph tool. I don't know why it's not showing up. It may also, there have been some problems with the GeoGebra applet server. Don't know why it's not loading. Okay, hopefully that shows up in a little bit. In any case, I think that's it for the gateway improvements I was going to show. Andrew, were there any others that we implemented that I'm missing here?
I think those were the big ones that we wanted to hit on.
There is another feature that will probably get into the release, but it's not in here yet, and that's an improvement to the page navigator and problem navigator up here. Currently, if you have multiple pages, then it would have a change page row up here and then this below. And Alex has a pull request that will hopefully get in that improves the appearance and behavior of that a little bit. All right, so that's all I have for you. Apparently these applet problems are not going to show up. I'll turn it over to whoever's next.
That's me.
Drew, do you want me to share my slides or would you
Yeah, you
like
wanna-
to share?
You want to
Sure.
share that slide and we'll talk
Sure.
a little bit about it.
Sure, I got it. Oh, sorry. Clicking on the wrong, there we go. Okay.
Okay, so one of the other things that has been my kind of pet project for the last year has been splitting out the rendering of WebWork content into a standalone application. So you have a URL here for my GitHub repository that contains the WebWork standalone renderer, which basically allows you to serve up any WebWork content. It will take a problem written in WebWorks PG language, turn it into an interactive problem, and it will then also grade and assess those problems. It also supports JavaScript web tokens, so requests can be made in a secure fashion. If you encrypt your JWTs, you can ask the renderer to provide you content in a secure manner where a student can be given a token. That token gets them a problem rendered, but the student can't change any of the parameters about how the problem should be displayed or any of the options. And then the results of the student interacting with that problem are also stored in a JWT format that kind of keeps track of their session, as well as the renderer supplies a JSON object that describes did the student get each of the answers in the problem correct? What was their state on all of those? What was their overall score for the problem? So taking WebWork content and embedding it into another content management system is now pretty available. It's just a question of integrating with the renderer API. So the part of this is that WebWork itself has been a monolithic application, and so for anyone who wants to provide WebWork content, in the past that has meant you need to spin up an entire WebWork application with all of the course management features and the database and all the bells and whistles just to get WebWork content embedded maybe in your content management system of some other type, right? So you can see here we're looking at Pretext and LibreText as two main users of WebWork content, but not using the WebWork interface. So splitting this out has been crucial to supporting those kinds of assignment methods or frameworks. So what we've got now is a standalone application that can be run in a cluster. There's a few snags still that prevent it from being really nice and easy, but you know the snags are not insurmountable. There's just a few little tricks if you're going to run more than one renderer in a cluster. I can actually show this real quick.
Is scalability mainly due to the fact that you can run these things in clusters, where you couldn't do that with it?
That's right. So each standalone renderer is capable of taking a request and giving you back a rendered problem. So you have a lot more throughput. Let's see. So what we have right here, this is just the basic interface. I'm running this on my, my local host. I've thrown a reference to a problem from the Open Problem Library here into the renderer. I can load it up and take a look at the source code for the problem. There are several supported templates, but let's just go with the classic. You can choose your random seed. Again, just like in WebWork, the random seed controls which parameters have which values in your problem when it renders. And there you got it. So this does an excellent job of, serving for anyone who wants to develop content. It makes a very easy side-by-side comparison in its standalone form. However, if you, like I said, run this in your infrastructure, you can use the standalone renderer to pull these problems back into your CMS, throw them in an iframe, let the student interact with it, and you just need to play some kind of man in the middle to grab the results of the student interaction and store them in your gradebook.
Sorry about that. So we don't have too much more time, so I'm going to go through this really quickly. We've had a lot of community events this past year, and this summer is an exciting summer for us. We have 3 code camps, the first of which has already happened. We did a real big redesign and reimagining of our web presence, and so we're super excited about our brand new streamlined site, which is openwebwork.org. We're going to post this link on the Moodle as well. We've done updates to the wiki, so that should be easier to navigate. And the next 2 code camps coming up, I'll let Drew speak to them very briefly. Like I said, we don't have too much more time. Oh, there we go.
we've got an OPL code camp. So in the next couple of weeks coming up, we've got a code camp that's focusing on reviewing problems and maybe reorganizing our taxonomy for how we categorize non-math content, just to make sure that the frameworks that we come up with for sorting content make sense to those of us who work outside of math. We've done a good job with organizing the math content. That's been in progress for a long time, but we now see the need for it in other disciplines, and so that's a big focus for us in the OPL Code Camp. And then we've also got the PG Code Camp.
Oh, I don't know why it's
Oh,
skipping.
you don't
It
have a
keeps
slide for
skipping.
that. We have a PG
No,
Code
no, I
Camp.
do. I do. I'm sorry. It's just skipping around like crazy. Let me go back. Here we
I
are.
did.
Sorry about that. Here, it's this.
Yeah, PG Code Camp later in July, where we're going to look at the guts of rendering problems and looking to simplify, streamline, and update the modules that we have available. And we got 1 more minute. CUNY's
got one
working
more
on
minute.
alignment with LibreText,
LibreText.
and OpenStax. Yeah.
Everything is on openwebwork.org. All of these event details, how you can get involved, also there. All of these links we will be posting on the Moodle as well. We want to give Peter a chance to talk about where we're headed.
Thank you. So just a real quick, one of the things that I'm working on is basically the next generation of WebWork. And it's basically redoing all of what we usually call WebWork 2, which is kind of the current interface of everything. It piggybacks on what Andrew's already said about modularizing things. So he's pulling out the renderer, and we're going to be able to sort of separate the user interface from like the database and the backend stuff to a lot of services. So, and one of the hope for this is to sort of the modularization will hopefully get some more developers in. So if anybody out there is interested in doing any kind of work in this, get a hold of us. We're always looking for new people. And so I know we're out of time, so I'll leave it there.
Most of that front end stuff will be done in JavaScript, right?
JavaScript or TypeScript and other stuff, yeah.
Not Perl.
Not Perl, and some of the backend stuff eventually could be non-Perl as well.
Right.
So.
Hey, we did it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you to the WebWork team for doing that. Putting together half an hour's talk at such short notice was a good effort. So thank you very much. I think maybe we have time for one very quick question, which I'll pick up there. There's a few sort of technical questions on the conference Moodle, which I hope you'll have a look at and answer in due course. The quick question is from Debbie Euster, and she just wants to know, is there a rough ETA for the 2.16 release? Do you have one at the moment?
But yeah, the release candidate is available as a branch on the GitHub repository. As far as finalizing that and getting it pulled into the main branch, I don't know if we have an estimate for that. We're really hoping to get some feedback on some early adopters and make sure that we're good to go. But that's really all that's standing in the way right now.
Okay. Well, thank you again to all four of you.